Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen of Gig Nation, and welcome to another podcast. It's your host, James Cronk, with Golf Industry Guru, and today we are going to bring on an old friend of mine. And when I say old, just because we've been friends for a long time, he's not old. I'm not old. And in fact, we're in touch with the younger generation because our guest today is an expert in engaging leaders and managers to help them engage the workforce, because that is what is so critical in the hospitality business, is creating engaged people that are service-minded. And I'm so excited to bring back on our show a former guest of ours previously, and someone who, if you're on LinkedIn or you're on social media, you will see that he is talking all over the world in a variety of different industries around leadership, management, and engaging people. Welcome to the Gig Podcast, Andy Stangenberg of Q Principle. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Hey, James, it's so great to be back. I'm glad that I have the opportunity to address you today. I've always been a big fan of yours. And I mean, looking back, we toured Asia together. We shared stages together. I mean, we did some magic out there. It was fun. It was really fun. So I'm happy that the invite for you to ask me some questions, to share my findings out there. What is real out there? What happens out there? So I'm really glad.
Andy, I know from following you on social media that you're working with hotels, you're working with everything from airports to obviously clubs and golf clubs of a variety of different kinds. And I know the great message that you share, and I know that you're always constantly learning and constantly seeking out, what's the issues of today. And so, I'm excited about having this conversation because you and I chatted just the other day about what we're going to talk about today. And we really both agree on the same topic, like in what is the most critical investment of a club that a club needs to make. And I know what your answer, but tell me your answer.
It's funny. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a student of my own industry because the generation changes, the expectations are changing, their trigger points are changing, their motives are changing. But what does not change is the expectations of our members. So we have to adapt as a club. And I always say in my leadership programs, the most important asset to any organization is not management, it's the staff. And we are measuring that by touch points to deliver service. Let me give you an example. I did a rebranding at a beautiful resort up in California a while back, and they changed their flag a level up. So I had breakfast at the restaurant, beautiful restaurant, and I asked staff and leaders when I do my seminars, how many touch points do you think I had with the associates, the talents, the staff? Touch points could be a nonverbal cue, could be a good morning, could be somebody serves me a coffee, somebody. So how many touch points? And the answer here is in 35 minutes, I had 27 touch points where I somewhat engaged with staff. Management, I had 2. And it's not because that gentleman was a bad manager. He's just one person and they have 30 people on the floor. So therefore, if you're looking at this from a success standpoint, where we want to go to make a club successful, we have to reinvest into the touch points and that deliver service. And that's the staff. It's almost like a light bulb, James. When you look at the light bulb and when you look at the cultural strength and the purpose of a light bulb glows from the inside out. So you initiate the glow before that light bulb can do its job and illuminate the area. We need to get the intensity and the purpose of that light bulb to make it glow on the inside. That's the same philosophy with any club. So we need to reinvest in the education, and I call it executive functioning. And executive functioning is critical decision-making ability through higher education and constant mentoring and coaching to elevate our staff to make a difference in the engagement quality with our guests, with our members friends, where we are creating an atmosphere that's been promoted by the inside and experienced on the outside. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it makes 100%. And I feel like sometimes I sound like a broken record because I'm always saying I never understand why a club or a finance committee or a board of directors will discuss spending $40,000 on bunker sand and approve it in about 3 minutes, yet they will not invest whatever it might be, a fraction of that amount, in their team or in their people or in their development or in their culture. And not, don't be wrong. Lots of clubs do. And you and I get a chance often to work with those leaders and those clubs and those managers that get it, that invest, when they bring in someone like yourself to do staff culture training or to motivate the team, they obviously get the fact that they've got to, turn that light bulb on. But there are so many clubs and so many managers and owners that I feel like they just expect these things to happen without cultivating the garden. And you would never expect your golf course to be in great condition without investing in it. Yet you expect your service and your touch points to be great without investing in it, right? So it just doesn't make sense to me. So what are you seeing now, I guess, Andy? I know that one of the things we're focused on today is talking about help. Look, none of us are perfect. We all want to get better. We all want to improve. And so as a leader, when I'm managing people, I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I got lots of them in managing people. But I think that in today's hospitality world, there are really some new and urgent kind of challenges, right, that are facing those of us that manage and lead people in hospitality. So what do you think's going on in that regard? What have you noticed this post-COVID change?
That really opens a tremendous door that could give us 5-6 hours of conversation. So hey, I want to start this off with a little funny story, James, if you let me. The difference between training and the higher sense of education, because education has to make sense. The purpose of education is to deliver something that makes sense to even the younger generation now. They just have different motive points. And there's a beautiful quote that says that it's motive alone that gives character to the action of humankind. So there's this great opening story that kind of guides us into what mentoring and coaching really is, because it has to benefit the audience. And training is a dead horse. Ask any group of people to come for training. They roll their eyes. They don't want to go. They're fighting this, right? Because we're only talking about work. So here's the story. It's kind of set this off for a funny tone. I'm not sure if you ever heard this. So at a local high school somewhere, there was a 15-year-old girl, and she brought lipstick to school, and she came up with the idea in the bathroom break. She put lipstick on her lip, and she must start kissing the mirror. And now this, I mean, you can imagine, this caught on like wildfire. And all these girls brought lipstick to school and green, yellow, orange, purple, neon, black, gray. And they put lipstick on their lip, and they decorated these bathroom mirrors with their lips and created the art form. Now, although beautiful, you imagine that the school had a problem with that. So the memos came out. And that's often what training is. We're telling people what to do and what not to do, right? And that fits. So this school tried to stop these girls from doing this. And I'm not sure if you have experiences with teenagers, but if you tell a 15-year-old not to do something, I wish you good luck. So nothing changed. I mean, the memos came out, the teachers got involved. I mean, it was mayhem. So one day, the principal had an idea. He called all the girls into the bathroom in one of the bathroom breaks, and he said, ladies, thank you so much for your artwork. I mean, it's so creative. Whoever came up with that, I mean, I salute you. That's fabulous. But these mirrors are hard to clean. So in order to demonstrate, we thought we'd give you a little show and tell. So we invited our maintenance person to give us an example on how he cleans the mirrors every night. So, sir, would you please give us a demonstration? He looks at the girls. He shows them the squeegee. He dunks the squeegee in the toilet bowl, and he squeegees. That was the last time any girl has ever kissed a mirror again. Now, I'm not sure if that is a true story or not, but it holds a tremendous punch on the change that needs to happen. How do we get connected? How do we get closer to, really, it has to do with willpower and acceptance. You can be the best coach and mentor in the world. If your team doesn't respond to you, your methodology is off. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So
the kissing the mirror, it makes sense. I can. That's a good lesson to learn. But what I like what you're talking about there, Andy, is the fact that
we'll get back to our conversation in a moment. But first, are you ready to learn from the world's greatest golf and hospitality industry leaders? Train your team and grow your business with a membership to Golf Industry Guru. Join for about $3 per day and give your team access to over 250 hours of courses, podcasts, webinars, templates, articles, live Q&A calls, and more. Free content samples and registration details at golfindustryguru.com.
We all know that now you can't just tell someone what to do and expect them to do it. People are independent. They want to be involved in the process. They want to be engaged, and they need to know the why. And we talk about this all the time. Why is this important? Why do we want to greet someone looking at them in the eyes when they walk into the golf shop? Why do we want to, not walk up to a table and say, "Are you ready to order?" Instead, we want to engage them and find out, are they there do they have 10 minutes before they tee off? Or do they just come off the golf course and they have an hour and a half to tell stories about who cheated on hole number 12, right? So if we don't ask the questions, if we don't engage with people, if we don't find out the why, then we're just order takers, and that doesn't create culture and experience. And so what do you think, what do you think managers need to do, I guess, to kind of to change the training thinking into creating and inspiring, I guess, a culture in their organization? What, as a manager, if I lead a department of 5 people in the back shop, or I'm the evening night manager in the restaurant, what are some things that I should be thinking about if I want to create a team that is inspired and engaged and happy and motivated so that my job is easier?
First of all, we have to understand the reality of what moves you, what's important to you, right? So, and we do this all over the world, where we're asking staff, who do you work for? And then they give me very blunt answers. I work for this club, I work for this club, I work for this hotel. So they've been streamlined through their past on, listen, you work here. Now, let's say if I work for you, James, I'm holding you accountable for my safety because I am actually devoting my time to you. And we have to redirect the way we think about this. And when I said, look, you're not working for the club, you may be employed here, but in reality, you just told me you have 2 little children. When you leave your house in the morning, you cannot say, I have to go to work, because that's negative. You have to define yourself that you fight for your family, for your future. You work for yourselves and for your family. And so we are redirecting people's willpower by saying, wait a second, that's true. Because if we fail, our family fails, right? And the other thing that we ask, it shows you how many of our associates think and have been programmed to think, when I ask them simple question, who's paying you? And they look at me like, the club pays me. And again, same damage. If I think that you pay me, James, why should I do something extraordinary for a member? Because you pay me anyway. So and I asked people this in a story, and I said, look, how much is a cup of coffee in your club? $7. And I said, really? You have to recalibrate that thought slightly, because your cup of coffee is not $7. It's the association fee, the initiation fee, the annual fee, the food and beverage fee. So your cup of coffee might cost $150,000 before you can even serve a cup of coffee to a member. Within that, it's the member who's paying you. It's the member who says yes to you and your family and your future because you're here. And that makes sense to people because it speaks to their value and their motive, and recognizing, I said, leave your house by saying, bye guys, I'm going to play with my members today. I'm recalibrating my way of thinking and reset my values. But getting back to your question, what we need to do to get access to our staff, we have to know what moves them, what creates that buy-in that makes sense. And before I tell you the answer, let me tell you what management is up against, especially the younger managers. And we get asked so many times, Andy, can you do a program on proactive coaching, on the coaching code of conduct, on how can we become more successful in altercating the performance of our staff without them shutting us down. So a few years ago, Q Principal did a survey with staff, and we did about 40,000 employees. And after each program, we gave them a little piece of paper with a traffic light on there. And this is critical. This is very important for younger managers to understand, because it's tough. Being a younger manager in today's world, managing staff that's double your age, that's hard. So we gave them a traffic lights a picture, and I said, all right, here's the deal. Imagine I'm your manager. I call you in the office, and I have a very firm conversation with you. You're not up to par. I need you to increase the quality of your performance. And I'm not mean, but I'm very direct. I'm setting the expectations high. How do you react? Are you red? Were you shutting down on me? Were you internally completely blocked me out? And you may not say anything because you don't want to get in trouble, but internally you said, who is this guy? I'm doing this job for 20 years, and now this clown walks up and just basically completely rejecting me. Because coaching is measured in positive results, nothing else. Or are you yellow? Were you much more sensitive towards that conversation where you walk away and you think, I have a personal vendetta against you, I attacked you, and you maybe cry and you think you should quit? Or are you green? Where you said, you know what, Andy, that's a tough conversation. I appreciate that you have this conversation with me as I'm going to show you. Maybe I lost my way here a little bit. So you're very acceptant to this conversation. So I said, circle your color. And the other thing I want, no names, very anonymous. The other thing I want is your years of employment in the industry, not in the hotel or club, since you started 0 to 1, 2 to 5, and 5, 10 and above. Associates and talents and employees who've been in this industry 10 and more years, 86%, James, were in the red. And now you let these people loose, and you have a younger managers trying to mentor and coach them to change their behavior. You can have Anthony Robbins in that club. If that staff will not accept you, you have absolutely nothing.
Of course, yeah. Well, and you're right, and I think that's one of the things about the hospitality business is that we do have this great opportunity to have, every different millennial group, every different Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y. I mean, we have them all, and they all have different expectations. They're all motivated by different things. They all have a different ROI, as I like to say, that, we as leaders, as managers, need to find out the ROI of every single person that we employ, because when one person has got the job so they can afford the rent, and another person has the job because they love to be outside every day, and another person has the job because they love it that they get finished at 2:00 in the afternoon and they can go explore their love of surfing. Everyone has a different ROI, and understanding that it's going to help them us lead them better. But let's talk, Andy, about one of the things that I know that you focus on quite a bit, which is the difference between managing people and coaching people.
Right.
And you talk about the coaching code of conduct. When you say the coaching code of conduct, what does that mean? What does that mean to the typical average person that is a manager in the hospitality business?
Coaching, if you look at any sports athlete, like a coach, for example, coaching is done before the game, not during and not necessarily after. It's setting the team up to do the right thing and play the right moves. The same with us. There's a difference between managing people and leading people / coaching people. You see, managers are hired based on position, based on rank, title, pedigree. Leaders are appointed. And coaching is mentoring is such a critical part in guiding people. And because if you respect somebody, you're more likely shift your behavioral pattern towards that person. And before we need to do that, we need to understand what matters to our staff. And the RI, I call it mantra. My mantra, when I grew up, it was a mantra by chain of command. That means my boss told me something. I didn't question that because he's the boss or she's the boss, and I did it. Then the generation now, they're 30, 35 years old. They have a mantra called mutual command. They want to do things together. Now, the Gen Zs and X, they have something called self-command. They want to be actively involved in the success of the operation and not want to be devaluated as an employee, whereas the managers are more important than an employee. They want to do this together. And I think for us to understand that gives us a tremendous insight.
Managing safety and compliance at your golf facility doesn't have to be overwhelming. Introducing the Toolbox, an all-in-one health and safety solution built specifically for the golf industry. Streamline your safety processes, manage staff training, equipment safety, chemical usage, hazard identification, and incident reporting, all from one easy-to-use platform. Save time, ensure compliance, and empower your team to proactively create a safer workplace. Learn how the Toolbox can help your golf facility thrive at thetoolbox.tech.
So what matters to an associate, to an employee? There are 5 critical things that really move the needle for a person. Five is the least important. It's just important, but not as important, and that's money. What am I worth? What is this company thinking I'm worth? Right? Next one is fair treatment. That if you write me up, it's fine. But Tim, he came in late yesterday. You got to write him up too. Number 3 is recognition. Recognition is not a pat on the shoulder. Recognition is including my family, giving me some movie tickets and said, hey, listen, you did a great job. Take your wife, husband, or partner to the movies next weekend. I'm very proud of you, what you're doing. Now have a cup of coffee with your associates. Number 4 is job security. And I'm not talking about that you don't get cut in the kitchen. I'm talking about if you are not sure if you have a job tomorrow, don't ask me to smile. And the number 1 motive, by far, not even close, is family and life balance. And that is the younger generation. And we have to tailor that. We have to speak to that. And that gets me, that information is important, because when you tell me here in a few minutes, and I know you probably will tell me here in a few minutes, so what are we going to do about it? How do you going to fix it? Because it's not only understanding the why things are the way they are, it's also how we fix it. So when we ask staff, why are you so reluctant? I do this literally all over the world. I ask, why are you so reluctant? Why are you so pushing coaching back into an unapproachable corner? And they said, well, we feel attacked. I mean, my manager tells us we were late. That's not coaching. That's telling people they were late. So I think we forgot to really build some different strategies and tactics, like what Sun Tzu once said. You know, Sun Tzu, the author of the Art of War. Strategies without tactics is a slow road to victory. But tactics without strategies, that's the noise before defeat. If we have no coaching strategies, and James, we have no results. So we got to come up with something very unique. And many of them said, Andy, you know, we get coached by somebody to tell us that we're doing wrong. It feels like we're back in the 5th grade principal's office because we're in trouble. And if you push people, naturally so, James, they either push back or they shut down.
So I hear you. And I believe it, and I've seen it. But I also know that there are people that need to be disciplined, that are always late, that want to get hugged every time they, show up on time. These sensitive wallflowers that, you're not allowed to raise your voice. You're not allowed to get frustrated. You're not allowed to, tell them that, no, they're not supposed to, ride around the mower without a helmet on and listening to their AirPods, talking on their phone. How do we, we talk about people want balance, right? I'd make this joke about, the fact that if I have one more employee tell me they need to take a day off to take care of the sick empathy cat, I'm going to lose my mind. Right. So, how do we get the job done, Andy?
Yeah.
And, how do we get the job done? How do we deliver the standards? How do we exceed member expectations? How do we get people to know that they've got to do these 25 things before they go home every day,
right,
and still make them feel warm and fuzzy?
Well, James, I love the question. There's a significant difference between mentoring and coaching and counseling. Counseling is a next level up. Coaching is to correct behaviors, to help people to become better and more consistent in their field, to be more qualified in their IQ, EQ, in their skill set, their SOPs, or in their emotional connection with members, whatever that spectrum is. But counseling is a different ballgame. And let me give you an example. I imagine that I have you stand in a lake, all right? And I'm giving you a rock, and I said, James, throw it in a lake to create ripples, because coaching changes things. Coaching changes behavior, performance. So, and if you throw a rock into a lake, it changes the surface. So that's a methodology, right? So I said, okay, go ahead, throw. And you throw, and I said, well, nothing happens because the lake is frozen. You can't even hit the water. So having the ability to know the difference and to answer your question in a little longer outline, now I'm going to give you some tools that we can use to recognize, and then also because your managers, and they tell me, he said, Andy, we're telling the same thing over and over and over and over again and get no results. You know how frustrating that is? I said, oh yeah, I've been there. So when I do and I'm walking you through a little group activity that I do with management. I pair them up in groups of 2. I split them up. One of you go outside, the other one stay back. The people who stay back in the room, I said, you've been a naughty employee today. You came an hour late. And outside are your managers. And when I tell them that you were late, they have to coach you. They have to come in and have to coach you. And I want you to shut down on them. I want you to roll your eyes. I want you to defend yourself. I want you to say, yeah, you don't have to look at my sick cat. My car broke down. I have all these excuses, you know. So we are simulating that. We're building really improv simulators, right? And obviously they don't know outside. They have no idea what's going. So they come into the room and they try to coach these employees and who are playing employees, and they let them completely run down, and laughter in the room, because that is reality what these managers are experiencing. Now we talk about it. And I said, look, if you push somebody and they shut down on you, you're done. You're done speaking, because the river is frozen. They don't let you in. And coaching is about receptiveness and not about forcing. So many times an employee says, well, yeah, then the manager gets angry at me. I said, you've been late. I said, well, I'm sorry. I said, I don't care if you're sorry. So it escalates into an argument. And now the manager says, now go out there and make my members happy. It's a complete cluster. So, and that's when we're going to come with the first strategy. So that's when I walk up to a person and said, I want you to play that employee who shuts down on me. Right? And I said, hey, you were late today. And the guy said, yeah, whatever. I mean, everybody's late. It's no big deal. And I said, oh, hey, listen, I was just glad you're here. Accidents and safety out there on the road. And I'm just glad you're here. How's family? Everybody's good? Glad, man. Have a good day. And you're done. You're turning that conversation into something positive. Give you an example. Have you ever tried to reason with a drunk?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's 0 results. Have you ever tried to argue with a 3-year-old about Disney?
Right. No, but I believe, yes, I can do the results, right. Yes.
It's the same thing. It has no results. So, and then everybody looks at me a little funny. So then I say 24 hours later, I'm approaching that person again because he was caught off guard and he gets defensive. And now literally, it's like the wall comes down, right? And now 24 hours later, I said, hey, Tom, do you have a second? He said, sure, what's up? And I said, hey, yesterday when I approached you about you being late, I kind of felt like you got a little defensive there. If I approached that wrong, then that's my fault. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to offend you. So I basically apologized, but not for coaching. I apologized for something much more powerful, that I hurt his feelings. And that throws people so off because no manager has ever done that. And the feedback when we do these research, that 8 out of 10 employees, when they come back and said, well, maybe I react a little over as well. I'm sorry too. And now the doors are open because what we did psychologically, this is all psychology. We are leveling the playing field, James. And now we can coach. I said, hey, Tom, what can I do to get you here on time? You're such a vital part for this club. Can I schedule you half an hour later? Would that help you with your transportation issues? That's because coaching, mentoring is helping, right?
Yeah.
And then we practice this with them, and the results are unbelievable. And then the third part, it's like a gearbox. Now, like 4 weeks later, let's say that I know that Tom was always on time. I look at his timesheet. I need to get off my chair, find him. And even if that is a common expectation, I still have to say, hey, Tom, I looked at your timesheet. I'm very proud of you. Thank you for following through. That's awesome. And that's called positive reinforcement. So that's stage 1. Now people laugh at me and said, Andy, you don't know our employees. There's some tough ones out there. I said, absolutely. It's like a gearbox in a car. You're not buying a car with one gear. You have to have different strategies for different people. So then we are replaying the next one. I said, Tom, I want you now to be a tough one. I want you now to, when I say, listen, I apologize for hurting your feelings, I want you to come down and say, yeah, you better. That was uncalled for. I didn't appreciate the way you attacked me. So now a more serious conversation, right? And that's when I respond. And then when the values come in, we talked earlier, I said, look, Tom, what do you think what my job is here? to boss you around. And then they said, I said, you got that wrong, Tom. My job here is to make you successful. And I said, you know when you should be mad at me, Tom? When I give up on you, when I become the nicest manager you ever had. Never correct your mistakes, because then you're on your own. But I tell you what, if you leave here and you fail, I would take responsibility because I have failed coaching you. You know, if you surround yourself with 10 people and nobody has ever told you your mistakes, Tom, you have no friends. As if I have the time and the effort to tell you your mistakes as long as I'm on your court, because you have family, you have a future, you have big dreams, and you cannot accomplish them by making mistakes and not owning up to them. So do you want me to stop coaching you? Or do you want me to hold you accountable and really show you what you're truly capable of? But James, that is a whole new conversation that levels that up, right? Does it make sense?
Of course.
So these are now answering your questions. That the next one is, when I had an employee in Hawaii that I couldn't coach at all, nothing worked. Nothing. And she made fundamental mistakes. And so what did? I did something called phantom coaching, where I included the entire restaurant staff, and we did that task where she struggled at. She had me in HR several times on harassment because she thought I was picking on her. So everything I've told you so far did not work. She was so sensitive. So what did? I took that out of the equation, and we played a service Olympics where I included that task. And I had appetizers there. I had some soft drinks there. I had some prizes there for everyone. And I shook everybody's hand to following that task and doing a great job, including her. That night I watched her, and she followed the task. That's called phantom coaching, where you're taking the personal aspect out, where you group coach and make it a rah-rah session. So nobody, until today, she has no idea that I put on that entire dog and pony show for her. Reaching people, James, is not just telling them what to do. And that is so critical for managers to understand. Have a cup of coffee with them. Talk about their family. Sit down. Don't always talk about the job and the performance, and talk about them as a human being, to be integrated, to be valued as a human being and not just as an employee. And when it comes to counseling, that's the next level, because if nothing of this works, now you're not a clown. You have to hold them accountable. You have to build a trial. So what I always did, I gave them an official invitation, like when Tom still came late and I couldn't get through to him. So now either he doesn't care, or he really doesn't want to, or whatever it is. Now I have to protect myself. So what I did, I had a write-up on my desk. I invited him, still offered him a cup of coffee or water. And I say, hey, Tom, let me ask you a question. Why do you want to hurt me and my family? I turned the script, and they said, what? I don't want to do that. And I said, by you coming late, you're letting everybody know that I'm incapable of running my department, and now you're hurting me. Now you're putting my job in jeopardy, and I can't allow that. Now you're really becoming someone who doesn't care about my future. Why are you doing this to me? What have I done to you? Does it make sense? And then he sees the write-up there. And I said, Tom, here's the deal. I care about you. I enjoy you. And I'm ripping up the write-up right in front of him. And I said, I give you one more chance. But this time you got to look me in the eye and shake my hand. And you tell me that you are managing my expectations. Because if not, from this moment on, I will document you until you lose your job. And if that happens, I don't want you to blame me. I want you to go home and tell your family that it was entirely your fault. Do we have a chance? Do we have a deal? Because now accountability and basically consequences are showing up. That is a difference between coaching, mentoring, and counseling. And that works because if people know that, hey, you're in my corner, Andy is the boss, but he is there to make me better. He's there to help me. He's there to keep my family safe. That makes sense to people. And that's what younger people need. They never had this coaching session. They've been thrown in the deep end, dealing with very challenging and difficult situations and staff, and try to make it all work. And that backfires often. And I see that thousands.
Did you know there's an easier way to manage risk at your golf facility? eGolf Waiver makes collecting signed waivers quick and hassle-free. Digitally gather signatures from your members and guests, whether they're checking in at the golf shop or at the bag drop. Keep your club safe from legal exposure, frivolous claims, and rising insurance premiums. Plus, our Lightspeed POS integration will enhance your workflow even further. Visit egolfwaiver.com today and safeguard your club's future.
I love it. First of all, wonderful examples. I love you just gave. You and I both know that there are managers out there that don't like conflict.
Yeah.
Like dealing with conflict. Who literally, if you ask them to have that difficult conversation, they would literally quit their job before they had the difficult conversation.
Right.
So what are some tactics, or what are some words of advice that could you give a manager to help them be more comfortable in having that difficult conversation?
That's a great question, James. And a little bit what we have done, the strategies that I've just given you is a great way to get in. And yeah, we are seeing two major forms of mentoring or coaching out there. And coaching and mentoring is not necessarily the same. But mentoring is more like working with people on a progressive growth plan, but coaching is more like in the moment job, behavioral change. But there are two major forms of coaching that we are seeing when we are going into the field. They're the three monkeys. And that's exactly what you just spoke to. I don't see, I don't speak, I don't hear. The three monkeys, because they're afraid of conflict. You really nailed that, right? So, and I'll get back to this in a second. The other spectrum is the quite opposite. It's called the seagull management. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
Seagull management, fly above people, crap.
Yeah.
Leave, right?
Fly away. Yep.
And yeah, right, exactly. And so what I give younger managers who have a hard time with these approach techniques and even how to approach the first scenario I gave you, by changing this conversation in the moment, by walking away, by keeping it positive, and said, "Hey, listen, I was just mentioning it. I'm glad you're here. Have fun out there." Right? So that kind of takes the pressure off by not having a tough conversation yet because the employee is pushing you away. What I have done in these coaching seminars, I'm coaching a young lady right now out of Seattle, luxury hotel, and she runs a very difficult restaurant. I mean, she's the restaurant director, and they don't necessarily trust her. And it's not her. It's because employees are being burned from other areas, and they're bringing that big way. Okay? So I said to her, before you have a tough conversation, is an opening statement that sets that employee up to think different. And she looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Imagine if you sit down." I said, "Look, Simon or Clara or whatever, the reason why I'm having this conversation with you now is because I truly care about you. I really think that there's so much more to you than meets the eye, and I probably see more in you than you see in yourself. And if you fight me, you stop learning." So having this, because it stalls people, it stuns people, because you're setting this up before you say, "Hey, you've been late," right? That's an attack.
Yes.
But if you say, "Hey, James, the reason, do you have a second in private in my office? Hey, the reason why we are having this conversation is because I care about you. If I wouldn't care truly about you, I wouldn't talk to you about this." So that's a nice pretext to what's coming. And I, in my leadership programs, I make this very clear. Respect is not being liked. And when I was the operations director in my old Grand Hyatt where I worked, and I had about 500 employees replying to me. And James, I'll be honest with you, I would say that about 25%, maybe 20, didn't like me. So I got like a bad report card every time I left. And I had this conversation with Michael McCarthy, who kind of echoed on that as well. And he actually started this conversation. And then I said, "This happened to me." So 20% of my employees didn't like me. And I knew that. And so every day I walked away working 12, 13, 14 hours and knowing that I'm not being liked. But 98%, James, they respected me. And you cannot earn respect without having these difficult and sometimes unpleasant conversations. And I think, to me, this is nothing else but a learning curve that younger managers need to confront themselves with. It's like anything else, If you are afraid of learning French, you only will actually learn French when you take that first step and you try. Same thing with coaching, right? When you, and nobody has been coached the same way. You got to know who talk to whom in which way. So it is a very complicated, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and many people struggle. And the easiest way to do it is to be liked by your employees. And that's the kiss of death. If your employees like you, go sell ice cream to them. They like you for that.
Right.
If you want to become a great leader, you have to have a very good eye on detail and have the ability to coach people with gestures, with conversations. And sometimes coaching is not always good to do it in your office, because the office is generally the negative energy field, especially HR. HR is where dead bodies are buried. That's a bad place to coach. You can remember, coaching is measured in positive results, right? So go for a stroll, sit in a neutral area, offer your staff a cup of coffee or a bottle of water. When they do that, the feedback we are getting, the manager said it's amazing. And we've been told we've never been offered a cup of coffee or a bottle of water by a manager. Never. Now, for me, that is mind-blowing, because that's our investment. And somebody got some feedback from a manager said, Andy, you're saying that employees are more important than us. That's not fair. That's a little harsh, man. And that their relationship is broken. And I said, well, ask any of your employees to come to see you in the office. But it's generally their first thought. I'm in trouble. We got to change that. It's called healing, right? And there's one guy, when he said, well, it's not fair. Who is celebrating me? Who is giving me my accolades? And I said, that's not how leaders think. Imagine if you give all the credit to your team. Even if you did it, you take nothing for yourself, and you really start celebrating the performance of your team, and they win and they perform beyond levels. Who wins by default?
Yeah. Well, that's the difference between leadership and managers, right? And being a leader and being a manager. Anyone can manage people, but as you said in the very, very beginning, you have to be appointed a leader, and you get appointed a leader by the people that respect you because of the walking the walk and talking the talk and all those other types of elements, right? But we've only got a few minutes left, Annie, and I want to put a challenge to you. So give me a story or an example of how you've seen a manager coach better, that's created an improved culture, I guess. I know you have lots of people that you've worked with and helped. And so I want our listeners to hear kind of a story that they can relate to, I guess, that if they do X, Y, and Z, they will achieve A, B, and C kind of things,
That's a great closing. And I actually do a big program in my seminars when I travel to clubs and when I work on improving their pre-shift meetings, because pre-shift meetings to me are a phenomenal opportunity to coach, mentor, and to deliver messages and not just, and I've seen this, I've coached someone just recently, and basically pre-shift was, he walked into his pre-shift and he basically rattled down, we have Mr. Miller coming in today, make sure he's a VIP and just very mundane and boring, not realizing a 10-year employee went to 2,400 pre-shift meetings. I mean, and so I gave him a speaking class, and I gave him our pre-shift formula that you never start with content. That's boring. Your people, they blend you out. Start with an emotional story. Start with a riddle. Start with a little something fun. Start with something that's creative, and you can get this on Google. You have fun stories, and then you go into the content. Then you go into the blended learning, which could be a game, could be a quiz, could be a little video, could be, and then you stop with a powerful closing to basically make this a story application and create a fun little event on a story that people are entertained by. And while they are entertained and they love it, and the content is blended into that entertainment piece, so to speak, which is full on coaching, where you talk about the behavioral pattern, where you talk about, hey, make sure we serve left, clear right today. Make sure we lap our black napkins so you can turn that content into a reality, and you theme it, for example, a team building. And if I may close with an emotional story, if you're good with that, because that's what he did for his pre-shift meeting, and he filmed it. His assistant manager, and I was so proud of him, and the staff was sitting there literally baffled, because what they expect and what they receive, that's when you move the needle. That's when you change. So one more time, powerful opener. This could be off the bat, a story that you Google on YouTube or on Google, and they're emotional story. It doesn't have to be industry stories. It could be a sports story that you turn into. It could be anything. Then comes the content. Then comes the blended learning. We play a game called Deal or No Deal, For example, we have bags with little prizes up front, and we ask the staff a question, and they say, well, so one wins. And I said, okay, you have a selection, you have 5 bags, pick one. Hold on, before you do that, I give you $5. And they said, deal or no deal? So we are reproducing that game show, right? And we do Jeopardy, we do all kinds of fun game shows that they love, and we give them basically the tools to do it. And then you come up with a closing that's powerful. Pre-shift should never be an association of negative content or representations. And so here's this closing story about teamwork. And I love the story. I actually shared a story in my seminars. I'm not sure if you ever heard this, James. You've heard a lot of my content. The story is about a young father who, there was a teacher-parent conference, and lots of parents and teachers and like 500 people, a big high school. And the principal came up and said, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, welcome. Before I get started, we have a guest speaker we would like to invite who has a few things to say. He requested to address you this evening. So he came on stage and he approached the microphone and he said, ladies and gentlemen, you probably don't know me since my son Shay is not going to the school here. But I'm here tonight because I want to thank you and some of your children for have given my son the best day of his life. He said, you see, a few months ago, it was a beautiful summer evening. We strolled through the park, and my son Shay was in a special wheelchair because my son Shay doesn't learn the way your children learn. He's heavily disabled physically and mentally. And we did a beautiful stroll in a special wheelchair. And there were you kids playing baseball. And there was lots of commotions, lots of people, laughter and cheering. There was a lot of energy going on, and your kids had a lot of fun. So my son Shay looked at me and said, Papa, do you think they'll let me play? I want to play too. And now knowing that no child in their right mind would want to have some like Shay on the team because Shay is just very different, but I could not dare to ask. So I strolled over to the stadium and I asked one of these younger kids and said, not expecting anything. I said, with the dear of your heart, do you think my son Shay could maybe play 5? I couldn't even finish the sentence. He said, of course, we're losing by 9. He can be on our team. No big deal. So I got him out of his wheelchair. They took him in. They gave him a jersey and a baseball hat. They put him into left field. And I was in tears. Because for the very first time, without any conversations, my son was accepted as an equal. And no balls came to him, but it was cheering and laughing. And I've never seen my son smile this much. And the rotations happened. And Shay's team caught up for whatever miracle. And now by a rotation, it was Shay's turn to bat. Now, I expected they would skip him because Shay barely knows how to hold one, let alone know how to bat one, but they did. So Shay's team, the base was loaded now. Shay's team put winning aside for that moment in Shay's life. The other team realized that, and he said, your kids did that right here. And the pitcher came close and basically just looped the ball. Shay swung, clumsily missed. He could have tapped him out. The game would have been over. But that's not what his pitcher did. He picked up the ball, he turned, and he threw it far out of reach of everyone to catch. And he said to Shay, run to first. At this point, everybody in the bleachers was on their feet. And they all start chanting and screaming. Now, the youngest had the ball. He could easily tap them out. It would have been the hero of the day. He dropped the ball, and he ran next to Shay with all the other kids, and they walked from plate to plate with Shay for him to do the home run and win the game for Shay's team. They carried him back to me on their shoulders. That's what your kids did. And I'm here to thank you because Shay is not doing very well. We know it's coming. But I want you to know that your children have given my son the best day of his life. And as long as there are kids like yours in this world, I refuse to give up on humanity. And then we turn this into a pre-shift, James. I often then share people and say, look, we have people who may be different than us. We maybe have people who sometimes fall, and we need to help them up. Let's make sure that if we are strong, let's not look down at people. Let's inspire us by helping the ones they need our help without judgment, because that's what the magic of a team really stands for. Some of the closing stories that we are teaching management to break, and you can imagine, and now you compare that with an average, hey, we have Mr. Miller coming tonight, make sure, by the way, be careful with the bread. Last night we ran out, don't give too much. that very monotone speech, versus that pre-shift, which is full-on coaching. Pre-shift, a great application to convert predictable content into inspirational education through executive functioning.
I love it. Andy, that's fantastic, man. Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful example, that wonderful story, and for so many of your great tidbits, as always. I mean, it's always inspiring and motivating when we chat, because I know you're so passionate about coaching people, about helping leaders lead people, and about creating great service. How can our listeners get in touch with Q Principle?
Oh, you know what? I mean, we are all over the website. Our website is www.q-principle.com. I'm not sure if you give your listeners my phone number. Happy to. Please do. The most conversations I have with people is not necessarily through my website, because everybody wants custom programs. You know, they want more on communication. They want more on coaching. They want more on frustration management. They want more on service excellence. They want more on. So everybody has different needs that I'm much more happy to answer via phone. And then, of course, my book is also on my website. The book's called 70 Summers Confidence. The audio book is about to be released, also on my website. And then book 2 is in the final stages to also come out on the market. So people want to research my website or contact me in detail. My email is Andy, A-N-D-Y, at q-principle.com. But James, if you could send that information out to all your listeners so they can have direct access. And as I said, what we did here today was just like 45 minutes, a very tiny snapshot, because normally my programs are at least 6 hours, sometimes 2 or 3 days long.
I know, Andy, and you've got huge fans that bring you back over and over again, and that's a sign of a great motivator and a great session organizer. And I would motivate anyone to wants to have a great read, a great motivational with lots of lessons, is to read 70 Summers with Andy Stangenberg. So, Andy, thank you so much for being our guest. It's always a pleasure. We are going to invite everyone to learn more by reaching out to you. And ladies and gentlemen, Gig Nation, thanks for listening. I hope you had a few nuggets you could take away and help you be a better coach, a better counselor, a better mentor with your people. And as always, we'll see you next time on The Inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.